It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. It's the Jill on Money show. We are delighted that you are joining us. It's always so exciting. I love my weekends. And I love the fact that you can hear us on the weekends and you're joining us and you're trying to educate yourselves and you're trying to figure out how to navigate your financial lives. And that is what we intend to do. Who is we, you ask? It is me, Jill Schlesinger, CBS News business analyst and certified financial planner, and my executive producer extraordinaire, Mark Talercio. Mark, I was going to say CFP, but I was going to give you another title in there also. What other title would you like to have? Okay, Daddy Extraordinaire, Spouse and Daddy Extraordinaire. How about that? That's a good title to have. Those are all very good titles. If you would like to join us on the air, all you need to do is send us an email. Ask Jill, jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. And you ask a question and you say, I want to come on the air with you. Why is that so much better? Because then we can actually make sure that we follow up with really smart questions. Isn't that great? So whatever financial matter is on your mind, you send us the email, say, come on the air. You can change all the facts of your life. Don't worry. We're happy to let you do that. It's like an alter ego. That's what Gabrielle did. She's on the line from Ohio. Welcome, Gabrielle.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Well, I have to go back to work. I've been off for 15 months now. Everything's been working great working from home. And I've just realized at this age that how much time we lose traveling back and forth to work. And my job is the kind that I can work from home, no problem. There hasn't been a problem this whole time. And I don't want to go back.
I hear you. I mean, I think you are really voicing something that I have been hearing from so many of my friends, so many of my colleagues, people who say, I've lost hours. And, someone did a funny thing, which is like calculate how many days of his life that he's lost to commuting. It's a lot. I totally get it. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on for you. And let's try to figure out if you've got some different choices to make. So first of all, Gabrielle, how old are you?
I'm 54.
You sound much younger. I just want to say that. You look great. All right, I'm just kidding. I can't see her, guys. Okay, are you single, partnered, married?
I'm married.
Okay, and spouse is how old?
Spouse is 57.
Mm-hmm.
He works for a county government, and we have 3 kids. One is totally launched. The second one, she works full time. She's a nurse. She lives at home. She wants to move out. The only reason why she's here is because I've kind of twisted her arm to stay here and save as much money as she can before she moves out. We have a third child who's in his, he has 2 more years of college. So he's here. He was out, but then with the pandemic, he came back home with everything being online. So, and I'm not sure if he's going to move back out or stay here or not. That's still up in the air.
So let's talk about what the options are for you. So how much do you earn, Gabrielle?
I make about $38,000 a year. I just work part-time.
As a part-time employee, do you use a retirement plan through work?
I have a 401k. Yes, I do. I do invest 30% of my pay into the Roth 401k option.
Great. Fantastic. Now, husband, county employee, that sounds like a very attractive human being because it sounds like someone who has a pension.
Yes, very. Yes. Yep. That is his most attractive feature.
Well, listen, after being locked down for 15 months, that's not bad. It's not a bad reward. Okay. How much does he earn?
He earns $73,000 a year.
Okay. He's paying into his pension. Does he also make a contribution into another retirement account?
Yes, he has a deferred comp, and you know what? He puts about 15% of his pay into that. He
Mm,
doesn't have a Roth option, so it's just all in,
traditional.
traditional.
So, what's his game plan in terms of how long is he going to stay, and what will the pension benefit be, and all that fun stuff?
When he first started, we were going to have, medical benefits and retirement. And now, of course, all of that has changed. So once he retires, we won't have those benefits. So
Mm.
he could retire next year with a full pension, but because we need the benefits, he has to keep working. So he's figuring another till he's 61. It really depends when our third child gets launched and gets a job. Because my husband's medical benefits are so good, we keep the kids on them because we don't pay any more for them anyway. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome. And when you say the full pension, what would that, let's move together. Let's go like 5 years from now. It's 62. What would that pension amount be?
he would get with the joint survivorship so that I would have his pension when he passes away. It'll be $50,000 a year.
Mm, that's good. And would he also be entitled to Social Security for him and for you as well?
No, he doesn't get Social Security. He doesn't pay
Okay.
into it.
And what about you?
I do.
Okay. So your Social Security at your full retirement age or at 70 or what are the numbers that we got for you?
It's 70, which I figure I would wait till then, is $2,050.
So essentially, I mean, look, there's a couple of things. Number one, if he retires at 62, you still have 3 years that you need before you can get to Medicare.
We would have to go on the exchange.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
Affordable Care Act.
his work will give him, if we don't qualify for a subsidy, they would give us a subsidy.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Until he got,
Okay.
but only for him until he gets 65. I mean, and I'm 3 years younger than him, so I don't know what's going to happen with me.
If you look at your current pay, about a little over $100,000 a year together, does that pay for your bills? Does that float your lifestyle? Is there anything scary that's going on that I should know about?
Nope.
Okay, great. And you're putting a lot of money into your 401k, obviously. So that's a good number. How much money have you guys saved in retirement so far? So let's talk about your 401k and his deferred comp.
My 401k, I have about $240,000 in there. And
Fabulous.
he has about $230,000 in his.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good.
And then we have some Roth investments,
Mm-hmm.
and we have together almost 200,000 in those.
You guys are doing great. I mean, really great.
I've just always been a saver.
That's great. That's awesome. Okay, we're going to get back to Gabrielle's question in just a second. Remember, during the break, here's what you should do. Go to JillOnMoney.com and poke around and look at all the great stuff we put out. And also, if you have a question while you're there, just click the contact button. Okay, we'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And if you have some sort of money-related issue that's on your mind, don't sit with it any longer. Write it down. Write it down. Write it down. Okay? Because all of a sudden you're going to feel like, oh, I'm going to be relieved. And then just compose this email, send it to us. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. This very fact will give you some release from the tension you could be feeling over these matters. Isn't that great? Again, all you need to do, put it down. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. And now let us go back to Gabrielle, because we're going to finish up our response to her question. How about the house? How much would you say the house is worth?
The house is probably worth like $230,000, somewhere around there.
You still have a mortgage on that house?
Nope, no mortgage.
You're going to stick around in that house? Thank God you had that house, right? Aren't you glad? Right? Because you had those
with
kids
the
around.
kids. Right. I mean, we would like to sell it and downsize at some point. I don't really think we would make too much money on it. Whatever we would buy would probably cost whatever we're going to sell our house for. But
sure. And you have an emergency reserve fund, just a little cash floating around?
We do. We have like $35,000 in emergency cash, and then I have like another $45,000 that's in Roths and a CD. Because when I started saving, we didn't have a lot of cash flow, and I didn't have money to put in retirement and have, an emergency savings account. So I started putting it in the Roth just to, get some money in there.
Child number 3 with 2 more years of college. Are you guys paying that out of cash flow, or had you saved money for college for him?
Yes, we have. I mean, he's paying his part too. Our part is already saved in a 529 for him, so we don't have to worry about that anymore.
If you look at your total expenses right now, since you don't have a mortgage and you pay your taxes, I'm just trying to figure out, like, if you blow out of this job that you're doing, right? Because you're like, ugh, I don't want to do it anymore. Could you guys live on your husband's salary only?
Yes.
You could. No problem, right?
Yep, no problem.
All right. Would you look for a job? Like, would you look for some sort of like other more flexible job? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I don't think I would not do anything. I have a hard time giving up my job too because I don't want to give up my vacation. But I'm getting lazy the older I get. I only want to work when I want to work.
I get that. I mean, you've also sort of earned the right to do it. So big picture, this is what I'm seeing for you guys, which is, you know what? You could quit if you want. But if it makes you anxious and makes you feel like, oh, I really like having that money, and I sure do like putting 30% of that $38,000 into my retirement account, and boy, that just makes my overall your overall picture for you guys for retirement is a good one. Honestly, there's no compelling reason where I'm saying to you like, oh my God, you have to work, because that's not where you are. That said, maybe you start looking for some new gigs. Maybe you can do something where you can work from home. And maybe I don't know, is your boss sort of like, okay, you have to be in? Is it like one of those?
Yeah. Old school. You're only working if you're sitting in your desk. And I guess I just have to get my head wrapped around if I want to say, either you're going to let me work from home or I'm going to quit. I'm not there yet. I kind of think they'd say, I don't know what they'd say.
It's very strange to me that there are people who have just learned the idea that actually, yes, people can work from home, especially like you are an adult and you know how to like do your job and actually perform. I get the idea that with younger employees, it's quite difficult to get them sort of part of and build them into the system of the place. But, maybe look for another job and see how that goes. And so Mark wants to know, would you be able to do a hybrid, just to say to them like, hey, you know what? I'll come in a day, 2 days a week, but 3 days a week I want to be working from home. Do you think they'd go for that?
Well, I mean, I only work 3 days a week anyway.
All right. So what if you said, I want to come in, so 3 days a week. What if you said, okay, I totally want to do this, but I have this kid at home. Can I just come in 1 day a week and let's see how it goes? I mean, is it a big, huge company or a small one?
It's medium. I don't know if they would do it. If I had a different boss, I think they'd do it. I just have to get in my head what I want to do. But it's just so empowering to know that if I want to tell them to take this job and shove it, I can.
You can.
I have to get to that mindset where I'm not going to be upset not to have that money come in. And, my husband tells me all the time, just quit. My paycheck is nothing because so much of it goes into retirement.
Yeah.
I can get a part-time job making $15 an hour and, have the same amount of money bringing home that I'm bringing home now. I don't know. Like you said, it's just not being able to save that I don't know if I'm comfortable with yet. But
Well, I'm going to tell you this. You guys have a good chunk of savings. Again, presuming that everything goes well with your husband and he can keep working, and it sounds like he's fairly happy in what he does. If he's willing to work, you do have that 50 grand a year that's going to come in. You will be entitled to Social Security. So there's two gaps that need to be filled. One is between your husband's retirement and then Medicare for him and for you, right? So there's like those years where you're going to be spending some of your money. And then it is the years between Medicare and you claiming your full Social Security benefits. And for all I know, look, I mean, if he doesn't hate his job, he may keep working, right? And that's fine. Like the longer he works, the better everything works. But if you say, I'll get a little job, or we're both going to work some part time, or, whatever it is, there is a lot of flexibility in this plan because of that pension benefit. And I think that that's really very important for you guys, truly, because I think that if you didn't have the pension, you could tell just from the way we're talking about this that you'd be screwed. You really would be. You would not have been able to save as much money. Now, listen, maybe if he didn't work for the county, he might work for a place that would pay him a lot more money and you would have saved more. But all I'm saying is that pension gives you tons of flexibility, which you may or may not want. Now it's, honestly, it's like the abundance, the choice can be overwhelming. So sit with it, see how it feels, and know that, Gabrielle, can do what I really want to do. You got these kids, you're a couple of years away from just being completely done in terms of, helping them out. And they're going to move forward. Make sure that full-time RN saves a lot of money in her retirement plan also.
Oh, she is. I've already got her. I mean, that's what I told her. That's the key. We got 15% going in there. I got her doing more money into a Roth. So, she's going to be set too. I told her, but you just got to start out right. That's the key. They got to start right from the very beginning. And yeah, dang it. My kids are gonna. I'll make sure.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. You're great. It's fantastic. Well, anything else going on that we should know about? You got your estate planning done and stuff like that?
Yep. Everything's done.
Fantastic. I think you're in great shape. Will you stay in touch with us and let us know either how it goes to get back to work or whether you make a different decision?
Yeah, I got a little reprieve on going back to work because the RN who lives here, she's a COVID nurse. So when I told my work that, they told me to just stay home until either the case counts go down or they tell me to go back. So I have no idea, when they're going to say I have to start heading back to the office.
Okay, so listen, in the meantime, while she's still there, poke around and see if there's some jobs that might be interesting where you could work from home. And you could do something that you feel good about and you could make a few bucks, and it doesn't have to be the most, but maybe you would say, okay, instead of making 38,000, boy, I'd be happy making 30 as long as I could be home, and then go from there and use this period of time. Let's break it into a little chunk where we say, let's use this period of time to just get your personal plan together and give yourself those options. And then once you have those options, you can make a better and more informed decision.
Great. Thanks.
Sounds good?
Sounds great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, if you, like Gabrielle, would like to get on the air with us, all you need to do is send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com, or if you're on the website, if you're on the jillonmoney.com website because you're signing up for our free weekly newsletter, just click the contact button and we will respond. Okay, we'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of a show or want to check out a past show, go to jillonmoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and this is the program that attempts to take the mystery out of your financial life. We are presented by LifeLock. LifeLock, let us help protect your identity. Mark, man, my mom got another scam letter. Unbelievable. She must be like holding her hand up saying, come get me. I'm a sap. She thought it was from the IRS. I'm like, Mom, that is not from the IRS. Shred it and get rid of it. So protect your identity, gang. All right, let's get back to your questions. We are going to Elena. She's from Massachusetts. Hello, Elena. What can we do for you?
So I'm 37. My husband is 40. We have a 3.5-year-old son, and we're getting ready to have a baby girl any day.
Wait. So you know it's a girl. So
We know
if you go into labor right now, you will name this child Jill. There's no doubt. Let's move on. Okay,
Absolutely.
continue.
So we're sort of thinking short term, we want to make sure that we're set up for success with the extended maternity leave that I'm about to take.
Mm-hmm.
And long term, we want to make sure that we're doing well with retirement and particularly college savings. I'm wondering your thoughts on how we're doing with that.
Okay, great. So you are now about to go on, you said extended maternity leave. What does that mean exactly?
That's right. So I will return to work next January.
Okay.
And I will be paid through August. So September through January will be unpaid for me.
Okay. And how much were you earning?
My take home at the end of the day, when all is said and done, I take home about $6,000 a month.
Mm-hmm. And what about spouse?
And he takes home about $3,000 a month.
Oh, okay. How much money have you set aside to float the $6,000 you will not be receiving for those months?
That's right. So our monthly budget is about $6,000 a month. So we're going to need $3,000 a month for those 5 months. And we sort of have two savings, and you can help me determine what's best to pull from where.
Mm-hmm.
We have a sort of our emergency savings, which has about 5 months in it, so about $30,000 in just a regular savings account. And we have a taxable account with Vanguard. It's just in the total stock market index, and that has about $40,000 in there.
Okay, got it. The taxable Vanguard account, when did you start that one?
About a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
We bought a house, and interest rates were so low, and our mortgage lender offered us a 15% down payment with no PMI. So we took the extra 5% that we had saved to put 20% down.
Wow.
And we put it in the taxable account thinking it would do better for us there than it would towards our mortgage.
I presume you've made money because you just popped it into the market. Markets have gone up. What's the gain on that account right now? Would you guess?
We put about 30 in there, and now it's worth 40. So
good. Okay, perfect. Okay, so 30K is your basis. Okay, now tell us everything else that's going on. For example, what do you do for a living, by the way?
I'm a teacher.
Oh, very nice. So let's go with you first. You'll be entitled to a pension eventually.
Yes.
Do you have a deferred compensation as well?
I don't. I've wondered whether I should open a 457 or something like that. What I have done is a Roth IRA, which I max out every year.
Great. How much is in your Roth?
About $115,000.
Fabulous. Okay. Let's talk about your spouse. Tell me about his retirement plan.
Sure. So his Roth IRA has about $105,000. His current 401k through his current employer, he contributes 9% of his salary to a Roth 401k, and they match 6% in a traditional 401k.
That's really good. Okay, perfect. So how much is in total in his part, the contributory Roth part? How much is in there?
About $50,000.
And in the matching component, which is the traditional 401k, what does he have in there?
You know what? $50,000 might be the total.
Okay,
there. I'm not sure how the breakdown is.
Don't worry about it. How much is his house worth, by the way?
Probably about $650,000. We have a big giant mortgage on it.
How big and how giant?
We owe about $500,000, but that is our only debt in the world.
That's good. And you're a teacher, and so are you the kind of teacher who's like, I'm in for the long haul? Yeah. Like you're a happy teacher, right?
I'm a happy teacher, and I'll teach until I get my 80% of salary, which is another 25 years at least.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so let's talk about this year. So in this year, when you're going to be on leave, and then you're not going to be going back September, October, November, December, what will your taxable income be Like, just do me a favor. Go, like, try to take a ballpark on this. You and Spousey, without those 4 months of earnings, will you be making less than $170,000 a year, do you think?
Oh, yes.
Okay, great. Here's what you're going to do. I've already figured this whole, I was like making notes crazy like this. Notice how I haven't talked to you about anything about college. So I'm just
okay.
I'm going to take a breath for a second, because we have as you said, short term. Short term, here's what you're going to do. You're going to blow out of that taxable Vanguard account.
Okay.
You're going to just sell the whole thing out. The reason is that you're in, you're going to be in, you don't have to do it immediately. You have to do it, you'd like to do it when your long-term capital gain rate kicks in, meaning that you'd like to do it when the assets have been held for more than 1 year. If that's the case already, that's great. Not a problem. And that will keep you in the 15% long-term capital gains rate tax.
Okay.
So that 10 grand will be, you say, oh, I made 10 grand. IRS says, no, you didn't make 10 grand. You made 10 grand minus 15%. And so you'll have the rest of that. Use that money. Don't touch the emergency reserve fund. That is your emergency reserve fund. The taxable Vanguard account is basically your short-term maternity leave money.
Okay.
And then you don't have to worry about, just use that, because there's going to be more expenses and you got 2 kids and it's going to be a lot. Everything's going to be happening at once. Okay, we'll finish up our response to Elena in just a minute. During the break, here's something you can do. You can go to our website, to JillOnMoney.com, and check out the resource section. We've got all sorts of neat stuff, so check it out. JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are delighted that you are hanging out with us. We are here to help respond to and answer your financial questions, your money-related questions, retirement, tax planning. Maybe it is a question about education funding. Mark, that FAFSA deadline is creeping up. I think it's the end of June. So we're going to have to talk about that a little bit. And we want to hear from you. And the only way to relieve yourself of the anxiety that you often feel about these matters is to get it off your chests. And we want to receive it. We want to hold your burden for you. So send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. And we here at the Jill on Money program, we are sponsored by Facet Wealth. Facet Wealth provides financial planning that's accessible to so many people. You know why? Because it is a flat fee, conflict-free planning outlook, basically. That's what they do. They do conflict-free planning. That's so great. You get this advice from certified financial planners. They're dedicated to you, so you don't get a different one every time you call. It's not a call center situation. And certified financial planners, which Mark and I are both certified financial planners. We're not in that business anymore, but we have that general outlook, which is I would say a more goal-based approach. That's exactly what's going on at Facet Wealth. So there are no wealth or account minimums. Facet meets you where you are. I think that that's really the best thing that they can do is that, what more can you ask from a financial services company? Just meet me where I am and listen to me. Give me unbiased advice. Check them out. It's at facetwealth.com. All right, we're going to get back to our response to Elena's question. She's on the line from Massachusetts. And hey, you know what? If you're like Elena and you want to get a little update about what's going on in your life, just shoot us an email. AskJill@JillOnMoney.com. Okay, let's get back to Elena. You go back to work next year and now your cash flow is just rocking and rolling, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go back to what you were doing, which is I like the idea of you doing the pension. I like the idea of you doing the Roth IRA. And he could put more money into his Roth 401k, couldn't he?
Yes, he could.
So I would do that before I start funding a 529 plan. I
Okay.
really would. I mean, I just think unless he's got a crappy plan, but if he has a decent plan, I would do that. I'm not sure. Like, do you feel like when you're both working and you're going to have 2 kids and all that, you're going to have so much extra cash flow for a 529 plan?
We have so far with one kid, he's 3.5 and it has almost 33,000 in it.
All right. Yeah. You can just like stop that right now.
Okay.
Number 1, sell the taxable account out.
Okay.
Number
So
2,
completely like all
yeah,
of it?
goodbye. Close it out. You're done.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, do it at least, well, I would say maybe not before you go into the hospital, when you get out, when you're feeling better. Then I think your husband should be maxing out his Roth 401k. And if there's then money left over, then you can start putting money into baby Jill's 529 account because she needs to catch up to her brother. And then let's see how it goes, because maybe you'll be getting some cost of living raises, or maybe some things will be happening, or maybe you have parents or in-laws who want to contribute. Like, all those things can happen.
Right.
But I'd rather that Roth be the basis of his extra cash flow than anything else. I really do.
Okay. He does have, from a prior job, what was a 401k that was rolled into a traditional IRA. And that's just sort of sitting there too for his, future retirement.
How much is in there?
About 135,000.
That's great. And yeah, I mean, like, you're great. You're going to get a great pension. You keep saving, but I like the idea of really maxing. I'm not telling you to put pre-tax money into a 457 plan. I'm really saying that let's get him to do that kind of heavy lift on the contribution, because usually those 457 plans suck. They're usually at bad places and it's a pain in the neck. So I think that you guys are in good shape and we can start funding the 529 plan as he is done with maxing out his Roth contribution. Okay, the 19.5, if he can get there. You guys have some life insurance?
My husband does.
What?
Well,
what?
So I have a past cancer diagnosis that has made it very expensive for me to shop for life insurance. So I mean, I have a very small amount that I get through my employer. I think it's maybe 100,000 or something.
So in my experience, when people have had cancer and they've even survived cancer, as time goes by, you always want to periodically check in, because the rating it does go down, unless it's some really weirdo rare cancer. If it's a cancer where the insurance company actuaries have experience with those cancers, they might say, yeah, that's not the kind of cancer that comes back so much, and we're willing to do it for this price. And maybe you just do it. Even if you could get a shorter term, right? If you could just even get like 15 years, it would be great. And maybe check out whether your husband's plan allows you to buy insurance on you without an exam.
Okay, that's a good thing to check.
How about wills?
Yep, we got them in place after my son was born. I suppose we will need to update them after the birth of my daughter.
But yes, after Jill is born, she needs to know that mommy and daddy are taking care of her. That's it. That's perfect. And I think you're in really good shape. So if you have any questions, let us know. And of course, send us pictures. Even though you have, we usually put only pets on the website. Just let us know how Jill's doing or what her real name is. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Another satisfied person who has joined us on the air. Don't you want to come on the air with us? All you have to do, send us your question and say, I want to come on the air with you and Mark. Here's the bonus. You get to hear Mark's voice. You want to hear Mark's voice more frequently? Why don't you actually check out our other podcast? It's called Eye on Money, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Check it out. Okay, we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. If you have a question, send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. If you're on the Jill on Money website, all you have to do is click the contact button. Very easy to do. Nancy writes that her son started a new job and that job offers a matching retirement plan. And Nancy writes, I suggested a 401k Roth. I looked on the internet. I found that employers cannot contribute to a 401k Roth. Is this true? How does this work with an employee matching contribution? Mark, are you surprised about the 401k Roth? So it is true, Mark says. All employer contributions must be part of the traditional 401k. But yeah, it doesn't matter because your son is going to be able to actually put all the contributions into the Roth, all the matching will go into the traditional. And, when he finally leaves this place, don't worry, you'll roll everything over. They'll probably convert it at that time. But let's deal with it, what we have right now, which is be sure to simply have him contribute the max he can contribute into the Roth. The company will match into the traditional, and later we'll have to keep these monies separate when you roll out of this. The thing that's interesting about this for everyone else listening is that it is incredibly important that you do not mix pre and post tax money. Okay. So if you've got a traditional 401k and you have a Roth 401k, no, you do not mix the two. It is totally separate. All right. We have a fantastic guest for you. This woman blew my mind. Her name is Dorothy Brown. She has done a deep dive into the United States tax system and how it is completely biased. So you are going to be in for a treat. This is illuminating, and she's fantastic. Also, she has a wonderful laugh. You are listening to Jill on Money, and when we return, Dorothy Brown is our guest. Dorothy Brown, she wrote a book called The Whiteness of Wealth: How the Tax System Impoverishes Black Americans and How We Can Fix It. Okay, we'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. Big part of that mystery is taxes. And we have a fantastic guest today. Her name is Dorothy Brown. She has written a book called The Whiteness of Wealth: How the Tax System Impoverishes Black Americans and How We Can Fix It. She is a super smart professor at Emory Law School, and she has done a deep dive. This is great. Check it out. Here's my interview with Dorothy Brown. So I just want to come out of the closet right now that I, like you, I am a closet nerd. And unlike you, I am neither a lawyer or an accountant or anything very fancy, but I love data. And so I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about what drove you to writing The Whiteness of Wealth.
Yes, that's such a great question. And it started with me doing my parents' tax returns. I was working as an investment banker, and I made by myself the income that both of my parents made combined. My mother was a nurse, my father was a plumber, and under our progressive tax system, I'm supposed to pay a lot more taxes than they are. And I didn't. I paid more, but I didn't pay a lot more. And I could not figure out why. And every April 15th, I went through the same battle and could not figure out why, but I had a job and I didn't have all the luxury of what I do now as an academic. So I put it in the back of my head and moved on. Eventually, I became a law professor, and one afternoon decided to take a break from preparing for class. And I read an article that said, how do you know there isn't a race and tax problem if you don't look? And I was like, what? Race and tax? Are you kidding me? But it was written by a mentor and someone who I respected. And every time I read something he wrote, he made me think in a different way. So I picked up the phone and I said, I'm going to write about race and tax. And little did I know, the IRS does not publish statistics by race and tax, which made my pledge very hard.
Yeah, it's interesting because you had to go there is great data through the government
Yes.
available. And the Census Bureau has great data often, and certainly states have some data, but it was shocking. And of course, when I thought it through, as you laid it out, that, there's no box that you check on your tax return, which says
That's right.
how you identify. So, what kind of data were you then pushed towards to try to go on this journey of discovery of what the differentials are? And then we'll talk about where those differentials lie and why that is.
Right. So when I figured that out, I thought, oh boy, and I took my eyes and retrained them. So whatever I read, and I went for information or publications dealing with race. And whatever I read, I tried to use my tax brain to analyze the data to see if I could make some point. And I came across a U.S. Commission on Civil Rights study that had the following sentence or so that said married Black wives contribute 40% to household income and married white wives contribute 29%. Now, to anybody else reading that sentence, they wouldn't think anything of it. But for me, it was tax gold because I know the joint return operates differently if you have a spouse contributing 40% or more to household income than if you have a spouse contributing 20% or less. That statistic led me to unravel the mystery of my parents' tax returns. They were paying higher taxes because they were married, filing the joint return, and they contributed roughly equal amounts to household income.
Okay. And so people are going to hear that and they're like, wait, I've heard of this thing called the marriage penalty. So what's going on? Like the marriage penalty, I think used to mean something different than what you're talking about. So let's first also, which was amazing. And I didn't know this as someone who loves this kind of crap so much. I didn't know that everyone used to file an individual return,
Yes.
whether you were married or not. So when did that change?
It changed with the joint return in 1948, but what led up to that was the Supreme Court decision in 1930 that was started by a rich white couple, Henry and Charlotte Seaborn, who were one of the few Americans to pay taxes. And they didn't like it. So they used their wealth to get a tax cut. And the result of that was the joint tax return.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your parents' situation and how that penalty plays out. Tell us what happened with your parents, their situation, and compare it with you as the individual making the same amount.
So, what our progressive tax system says is as income increases, so should the tax rate that applies to your last dollar, which means if I make $70,000 and my parents each make $35,000, the tax rate applicable to the last dollar that the $70,000 earner makes is going to be significantly higher than the tax rate applicable to the last dollar the $35,000 worker makes. The problem with the joint return and how the marriage penalty is created is spouse A's income is slapped on top of spouse B's. The progressive tax rate that applies to them is much higher than had they remained single.
I mean, and it is kind of crazy because when you
Yes,
think about it, 75 or $80,000 should be 75 or $80,000 no matter what.
that's right.
So that's just the income tax part of it, which to me, I always get nuts about the income tax code and how weird it is because there are so many parts of it that penalize certain groups more than others. And I want to
Yes.
talk about the racial issues behind that created it and how that has impacted the disparities and how inequality has blown out. So I hate the idea of a home mortgage interest deduction. Why is it that an owner gets treated differently than a renter? Well, how did that develop?
Well, in the beginning, all interest was deductible, whether it was business, whether it was personal, whether it was consumer. That all changed in 1986 with the Tax Reform Act. And the only personal interest that was then deductible was the mortgage interest deduction. That was kept because of a very fierce real estate lobby.
The same real estate lobby that was very much instrumental in preventing Black people from buying homes.
Exactly right. That's exactly right, Jill.
So now we have a situation where there are these red line districts where basically realtors are like, okay, you can buy a place in the South Bronx, maybe. And it sounds like your parents were able to do that, but mostly because your dad worked for a guy who helped him
Yes.
out, right?
A white guy who helped him out. Yes, absolutely. His boss gave my parents a second mortgage, which was a down payment because my parents couldn't have afforded it without it. Absolutely.
Would they have been able to actually buy a place in the South Bronx because that was one of the areas where they were like, okay, it's okay if black people buy there? Or would they have been shut out because they would not have been able to get a mortgage no matter what?
They wouldn't have had the money for the down payment. They would
Yeah.
not have been able to afford it. They wouldn't, no lender is going to give 100% financing. So
Right.
there's just no way they would have been able to afford a home. And what they bought was a 3-family home so that
Mhm.
the rental income from the second and third floors helped pay the mortgage.
We'll get back to our interview with Dorothy Brown in just a minute. It's going to really open your eyes to how this tax system has developed over the past many decades and how it may not actually serve you. Maybe you are not served by this. It's Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. Oh gosh, we are in the midst of an unbelievable, eye-opening interview, a sprawling one with Dorothy A. Brown. She is the author of The Whiteness of Wealth: How the Tax System Impoverishes Black Americans and How We Can Fix It. And a lot of this book and this exploration of the tax system does reveal that there are many legal ways that people are able to navigate the tax system. And the problem is that, if you don't know those ways, you're kind of screwed. I just think that the tax system itself conjures up so many questions, so many issues for people. When I think about tax planning and when I think about how it relates to your overall financial life, I do think that it is often the case that people can use a financial planner not to necessarily prepare their taxes, but to actually think about how to be smart about weaving your tax planning into your financial planning. And that may be a reason why you want to contact our sponsor, Facet Wealth. Facet Wealth does provide financial planning that is accessible to so many different kinds of people. And their planning structure is one that is conflict free, meaning they're not selling a bunch of expensive insurance products. It is a flat fee, and you get your advice from fiduciaries, meaning people who have to put your interests first. They're all certified financial planners. They're dedicated to you. The person you're assigned is the person you're assigned. You don't get a different one. And the approach is a goal-based planning approach. It's really so smart. Why would I want to do financial planning that's cookie cutter? I'd want to do financial planning that's for me, right? That's what makes sense. So, what else does Facet do differently? Well, Facet does not actually have any hurdles to working with them. There's no wealth or account minimums. Facet meets you where you are. So, if you want to check it out, you go to facetwealth.com. That's facetwealth.com. Okay, now I got to get back to this. Now, where are we? We are talking to Dorothy Brown, who's written The Whiteness of Wealth. It's a really interesting book. It's so readable also. I really encourage you. And what we're going to talk about in this part of the interview is the disparity that we see between people of color, blacks in this case, because that's what her research focuses on, and white people, and where that wealth disparity comes from and how it is exacerbated by the tax code. Here's more of our interview with Dorothy A. Brown. And so, if you just look at the idea that each side of a black couple tends to contribute more equally to the overall income, so they get penalized there, they often would get penalized because they couldn't actually buy a home. They didn't have enough money to do that.
Right.
And they were not able to grab the home mortgage interest deduction or all the other property tax
Right.
deduction, et cetera. Where else did you go to try to understand how come the wealth disparity persisted beyond the tax code?
Home ownership is a big driver of white wealth.
Right.
So, looking at the returns to home ownership, so I looked at sociology research that showed that when you had more than 10% of your neighbors are Black, the value of the home declines. And if it's more than 20%, it declines even more. So, the greater the percentage of Black neighbors in the neighborhood, the lower the value of the home. So, you could see in sociology research that goes back decades that shows the racial disparity in home ownership. And you have so many people saying, well, if we just had more Black people owning homes, we'd be able to make a dent in the racial wealth gap. I will say this: equity or net worth of Black homeowners is significantly higher than the net worth of renters. But there will always be a racial wealth gap associated with home ownership because Black Americans live in predominantly Black or racially diverse neighborhoods that don't bring the appreciation with it, whereas white homeowners live in homogeneous white neighborhoods with very few Black Americans.
Okay, so now you have to tell your own story about how you basically are like, oh, wait a minute, I screwed myself by buying a house in a Black neighborhood.
Yes. So the first home I bought was in an all white neighborhood in Ohio. And I sold it. I made money. It was no problem. I thought that's how homeownership worked because this was before I did any research on homeownership and tax subsidies and race. So I moved to Virginia. I buy a house in a racially diverse neighborhood on purpose because the area is very white. And as I put it, I want to see Black people other than when I look in the mirror, right?
Mm.
So I buy a home on a racially diverse street, think nothing of it. Then I move to Atlanta and I'm selling the home and I can't sell it. And I'm starting to do research for a race and homeownership piece I'm writing. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't sell my home because I'm living in a racially diverse neighborhood. I kind of like smack my forehead. Ultimately, it sells, but it left a mark, right? The research left a mark. Now that I know, I can't unsee it. And when I moved to Atlanta, I couldn't quite figure out the real estate market, but more importantly, I didn't want a job tied to a home again. So I bought a house on Martha's Vineyard. Why? Okay. Why? So I vacation in Martha's Vineyard since the late 70s and love it. And in the summer, lots of Black people are on the vineyard, right? So when
Right.
I tell people I go to the vineyard, they go, huh? I'm like, oh, you don't understand. It's like Black Mecca up there when you're walking around in the summer. So it's a white area, but there are a lot of Black people. So for me, it's the best of both worlds. But yeah, I use this information to buy a house in Massachusetts and I live in Georgia.
You end your chapter on the Black and white housing market in your great book, The Whiteness of Wealth. And you have some tips, which is, of course, I don't want to harp on the buy in a white neighborhood, but you
Yeah.
said one big tip is to have neutrality in the tax code. Now, interestingly, I feel like there is like maybe a glimmer of hope of actually having tax reform under this current administration, but I still feel like that mortgage interest, man, it is sacrosanct. So, what do you think is the possibility of just that gets scrapped eventually?
Oh, I think it's huge, and here's why. The Trump tax cuts. The
Mm,
Trump tax cuts, which increased the standard deduction, significantly minimized the percentage of taxpayers who itemize, and you have to itemize deductions in order to get the benefit of the mortgage interest deduction. It
right.
used to be 1 in 3 Americans itemized. Now it's 1 in 10.
Mm,
The increase of the standard deduction significantly decreased the amount of Americans that can get a tax break because of their mortgage. Whether the real estate lobby complained, it was irrelevant. they weren't able to stop the train. So,
Mm.
given that we're now at a point where 1 in 10 itemize, I think we've got a much better chance now of getting rid of that and other itemized deductions.
And one other thing that you pointed out, which makes so much sense to me, and I was thinking about this because I was sort of my first entree into journalism was I was a money manager, financial planner, and then I came over to journalism right amid the financial crisis. And
Hmm.
one thing you point out, which is fascinating, is that you could buy any asset in the universe, and if you lose money on it, the tax code will help you
Yes.
out, but not a house.
Yes. And Black Americans, Black homeowners are more likely to sell for a loss than white homeowners. So Black homeowners get disadvantaged by our tax subsidies, by our tax policies, right? Why can't we allow a loss on a sale of homes?
Where did that come from?
It came from the idea that a home is a personal asset as opposed to an investment asset, something held for income, right? So
Uh-huh.
a home is something you live in. So we don't view that as an investment. So we allow losses on investments, but we don't allow losses on personal assets. So if I sell my car at a loss, I don't get a tax break either.
We'll get back to our interview with Dorothy Brown in just a minute. If you have a financial question, do me a favor. Send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. If you're on our website, just click the contact button. Don't forget to tell us if you want to come on the air live. Mark will do all the rest. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to jillonmoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life, but we also have some awesome guests that come on the air and make you smarter. All you have to do is listen to them. It's so great. That's what I do. I basically book the people that I think would be interesting to all of you because it's interesting to me. And if you have some suggestions, don't forget, shoot us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We're going to go back to our interview with Dorothy Brown. She's the author of The Whiteness of Wealth. And in this section, I think that it is imperative to not just focus on the tax system and how it's actually disproportionately and negatively impacting Black Americans, but it's also doing that to the younger Black Americans out there. And so in this part of the interview, I asked about how Black millennials are doing. You'd think, oh, they've got all the information in the world. They'll be able to. No, the system is so entrenched that even if you're a youngster starting out, it can be really bad. So here is more of our interview with Dorothy A. Brown. Black millennials' wealth is sliding. Now, what's I think important about this is this can really bring us to the conversation around education and higher ed.
Yes.
So I know you're in higher ed up to your eyeballs. Don't
Yes.
slam your institution of that's paying your bills, but the system of how education and loans and how this has developed has really disproportionately hurt people of color. Can you explain why that is?
Yes. So we see that Black Americans leave college with more debt than white Americans. And over time, the disparity grows. Part of the problem is Pell Grants have not kept up with the cost of tuition. So we have a lot of low income Black Americans who go to college. 60% of Black students who start college do not finish and they leave with debt.
Wow.
So the racial wealth gap has a significant piece of it due to the racial gap in debt between Black and white Americans.
The gap that exists is not just the poor people who actually go for a for-profit institution.
Yes.
Because that is we know that is been a place where so many places prey on
Yes.
lower income people, people of color, everything. Okay.
Right.
But what you lay out is that no matter at what level, that
Right.
Black graduates are not getting the most out of their education and even grad school. So even your cohort
Right.
are not making as much money as the same person with the same designations and your fancy degrees. The white person is getting paid more. Why is that?
Racism in the labor market, right? So research showed when you had resumes of a Black guy from Harvard and a white guy from Harvard applying to the same positions, the Black guy had to send out more resumes than the white guy. And when the Black guy was offered an interview, it was for a lower paying position. Racism in the labor market is very real. Black college graduates are more likely to have more stresses on their income than their white peers. Black college graduates are more likely to send money home to their parents, grandparents, and other family members because those family members, those parents experienced Jim Crow, didn't have the same wealth building opportunities. Their white peers, on the other hand, are more likely to get money from their parents.
What's so fascinating is that when you think about that, that like trickles down to so many different things, right? So here I
Yes.
am, I'm hosting a podcast and I say, put money away for your retirement,
Yes.
do this, do this. And then oh, why aren't you putting enough money away?
Yes.
And the answer may be, I'm still helping my parents.
That's right.
And, I find myself in a weird situation, which is, often it's a lot easier for me to say, hey, Dorothy, you got 3 kids. I get it. It sucks, but you're not going to be able to put away for college right now. You got to concentrate on yourself. It's very different to say, hey, Dorothy, I know that your parents are struggling and they're
Yes.
in their 70s, but
Yes.
you still got to put away money for yourself. So there's only so many dollars available. So that means that many of the really professional and
Yes.
high earning Black people are still helping out their family members, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that really does hurt their own retirement prospects.
It hurts their retirement. It hurts their ability to save for their children to go to college. So the cycle will be repeated. It pits grandchild against grandparent.
I want to talk a little bit about another thing in the tax code that could be changing, but drives me insane. And it's called the stepped up cost basis. And so one of the things that has always exacerbated wealth between those folks who have a few dollars, not even like a ton of money, and those who don't have like investments or they don't have a house, is that when you have somebody who dies, under the current law, the asset that person inherits steps up the cost basis. So no tax has to be paid. By the way, doesn't it drive you nuts when people say, well, it's already been taxed? But if you sold it during your life, you'd have to pay tax on it, right?
And yes, however, if you sell your house during life, you don't have to pay tax. Up to $500,000 a gain if you're married escapes
Right.
taxation, right? So the problem is people don't pay taxes on it.
Exactly. And so talk a little bit about how, it's so weird. It's sort of like we go from birth to like
Yes.
your earning years to your college years, right? Your college years, your earning years, your retirement, and now we're at death. All of this gets more pronounced. What's happening at death that exacerbates the issue?
What happens at death is, let's say grandma dies and leaves you property. Grandma paid $10,000 for the property, but the property today is worth $100,000. So you get the property and you turn around and sell it the next day. Well, what's your gain? Is it the difference between 10 and 100, which was never taxed? Or is the difference between 100 and 100? And our tax law says the difference is between 100 and 100, which means you have no gain. You get a basis in that inherited property equal to the fair market value when you get it. So you turn around the next day, sell it for $100,000. You have $100,000 of cash, tax free. That's how wealth is transmitted, and we see the racial wealth gap just growing.
Okay, we'll finish up our interview with Dorothy Brown in just a minute. If you would like to check out some of our other stuff that we've created, just go to our website, jillonmoney.com. You can listen to other shows and different shows. You can read the stuff that we write and watch old TV segments. You can comment on my hair. You can do whatever you want. Just hop onto jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, she's all over the place. Go to JillOnMoney.com to find it all. Now back to the show with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It is Jill on Money. And this is the program that is not scary or boring. You know, I know we're talking about money, but, you know, it's also a show that wants to provide you with some entertaining, but also unconventional insights. And we do that by bringing you some cool guests that you may not have ever heard of. We do that by talking about topics that may feel like a little bit difficult to sort of participate in without a certain core base of knowledge. We'll help you with that. We'll also help you with whatever's going on in your own financial life, investment life, retirement, education, taxes, whatever it is. We are here for you. All you need to do is send us an email. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. askjill@jillonmoney.com. And if you want to come on the air with us, if you'd like to check out the Capital One Bank virtual studios, you know, Capital One, Banking Reimagined, what's in your wallet. If you want to join us, tell us that you want to come on the air with us. And Mark does everything else. It's so easy. It's really fantastic because this is how my life is. I ask him for something that seems really hard. He makes it easy. I love that. Let us know how we can do anything for you. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com or go to our website, jillonmoney.com. All right, we're going to the end of our interview now with Dorothy A. Brown. She is the author of The Whiteness of Wealth, How the Tax System Impoverishes Black Americans and How We Can Fix It. And in this part of the interview, we discuss what certain changes that could be proposed to the tax code and whether or not she's optimistic about whether some of these changes are actually going to occur. So here is the conclusion of our interview with Dorothy A. Brown. Are you encouraged by the proposed idea around changing some of the structures for the wealthiest? Not everyone, but it is the wealthiest on this one.
Yes, I am. I am encouraged by what I'm seeing out of the Biden administration with respect to tax policy proposals. You're absolutely right. It's really for the high end. But there's an argument that, you know, once the camel's nose is under the tent, you can start lowering those income levels. So I am cautiously optimistic about President Biden. I'm not optimistic about Treasury.
Oh, by the way, everyone listening who thinks that Dorothy's like in the tank for the Dems, can you talk a little bit about your Republican foray?
Yes. So I became a Republican when Dukakis said that he didn't want Jesse Jackson campaigning for him because he was afraid he was going to turn off voters. And then Dukakis did an about face when he looked at the polling data and decided he was going to let Jesse campaign for him. And I said, okay, the Dems aren't good on race. I'm done. I cannot be in a political party simply because of race because they both suck. So I went to the Republican Party because they are the party of smaller government. And I said, well, the government's pretty racist actor, so let's just get him out of the business. Well, fast forward to Barack Obama running for president, and I worked for him, not worked for him, but I worked on the campaign, getting out the vote, and switched back to the Dems, and that's where I am now.
Okay, so let's get back to the tax system right now. If you had to pick 3 top priorities, the Dorothy Brown platform for how to fix this, what are the 3 most important things that have to be fixed? What should people know about those things?
First, the IRS needs to publish statistics on race. And the reason why I'm pessimistic about Treasury is they've done nothing on this. The president signed an executive order on racial equity, and many government agencies have stepped up. Treasury has been MIA. All they do is issue press releases about talking to some civil rights group. They do nothing. So we need racial data published by the government. Second, we need to tax income from wages at the same rate as income from capital gains, income from
Amen.
stock, right? That is an absolute must. And the third thing is whatever tax reform the Biden administration proposes needs to have a racial impact analysis accompanying it. No longer should we ever have tax discussions without racial impact discussions as well.
And it's so core to this country about fairness
Yes,
that I think what is important, if you're listening to this and you're like, "Oh, I'm white, I don't care because I benefit from it." You
yes,
don't actually. I mean, you do benefit from it, but like if we had a fairer system, it would be fair for everybody, for
yes.
people all over the income stream. It just so happens that has become glaring. Even just I remember I did an inequality piece for CBS Sunday Morning, and, when I looked up that data around the median net worth, it is ridiculous. It's 10 times the level of net
Yes.
worth for white versus black. And that's not good for a society. And it's not good for capitalism, by the way. It really isn't.
It isn't. And I will also tell you that the marriage penalty impacted Black Americans more than white Americans because Black Americans are more likely to be in those dual equal earner households, and white Americans are more likely to be in single wage earner households. However, there was always a percentage that my research found of white married couples paying a penalty. So there were white couples that were being harmed the way that Black couples were.
Thanks again to Dorothy Brown for joining us. The book is The Whiteness of Wealth. Check it out. It's amazing. If you missed any part of the interview, go to the website, jillonmoney.com, and you can listen to the earlier parts that you could have missed. jillonmoney.com. Just click on the Listen tab. Okay, we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. Mark, I don't always keep every single book when there's an author. You know that, right? Yeah, we used to have a pile of books in our old physical studio that was miles high, it felt like. Anyway, I kept the Dorothy Brown book, The Whiteness of Wealth. It's actually on my bookshelf, and it is in good company. I mean, very good company. So, it's right up there with my own book. Okay, just kidding. It is on the same shelf, but it's up there with a lot of cool stuff like Tim Harford's book. I always keep those. Anyway, if you've got a financial question or if you have a good financial or, policy book that you think is interesting, let us know. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Let's squeeze in one more message from yous guys. This is from Benjamin, who's 84 years old. He says, I've got a traditional IRA. It's worth $164,000. I'm thinking of converting it to a Roth. How does one go about estimating the tax to be paid pursuant to the conversion? Well, Benjamin, all that happens is you actually will take the amount of money that you are converting, and that becomes your income. So if you're in a really low tax bracket, you would probably maybe just consider converting the amount that would keep you in that tax bracket. Maybe you're in the 12% bracket, then you just go up to the upper limit. But I need to know more about you, to determine whether or not this is a good idea. It may not be necessary in some respects. It may be that you could just kind of let it ride and take the money out as required distributions. I don't know, something to think about. But we are happy to answer that. And maybe if you could follow up, we could get a little more info for you. All right, that's it. That's the program. As always, we are so delighted that you have joined us. Our music is composed by Joel Goodman. Mark Talercio is our executive producer. And we would like you to please, 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 in light of this whole transitioning out of weird COVID world into more normal world, still continue to do something nice for another person today. It will make that person feel really good, and it will make you feel really good. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.